His rear shields are almost down, by the way. Oh, he wants a piece of me. He really wants a piece of me. Oh, he's taking damage on the rear. Oh, he's almost dead.
On my way back in?
No, he's dead. His rear is red.
Nano just invited me to a party.
Dead. The Crusader Ares Ion. Where do we even begin with this thing? For a while, we could start with the marketing. Marketing sets up the expectations that when you purchase this ship, it's going to be powerful. That the weapon attached to the thing is going to be supremely powerful.
In conjunction with Bering, we are currently crafting the most devastating Size 7 mountable ship cannon ever devised. The SF-7, being prototyped in both ballistic and laser configurations, is specifically designed to incapacitate capital-class vessels.
Because if it can take on capital ships, if it can take on even sub-capital larger ships to sub-capital ships, then it should be good against just about everything. At least that would be the expectation that everybody would have for Star Citizen, mostly because the Star Citizen doesn't use a rock, paper, scissor kind of damage state where you have various types of armor types. You have light, medium armor, heavy armor, and you have weapons that do less damage against light armor but more damage against heavy armor. You know, you'll see a lot of RPGs that'll have that kind of system, or not just RPGs but RTSs and whatnot. Marketing has always been problematic with Star Citizen because CIG likes to use in-lore marketing for their spaceships. So this distorts the expectations for anybody who's not been with the project for a very long time, acts as the in-lore company's puffery, which is an actual phrase, an actual word for an exaggerated or false premise. That's what kind of a puffery is. And companies, even real-world companies, will put out claims of like, oh, we have the best coffee. It's very subjective claims. And that's kind of how Star Citizen markets its spaceships to the backers and potential customers, people who want to buy them. You go watch the Ares Ion commercial, you can go read the lore pieces on it, and it leads you to believe that this thing is going to be super powerful. Then you actually get it into the game, and oh boy, it went through a balance pass, and it's really hard to use. So it leads a lot of people to be rather disappointed in the end result. And this is not the first time this sort of thing has happened. We've gone through many balance iterations. The Super Hornet used to be good, the Saber used to be good, the Glaive used to be pretty good as well. Same with the Scythe used to be pretty good as well a long time ago. And these are ships you just don't see anymore. Mostly these days you see a Gladius, you see the Arrow. You don't really see the medium fighter kind of category show up too much as a result as well, thanks to CIG massaging the numbers on the back end. And I understand that numbers are placeholder, it's an alpha, but there is something to be said about allowing people to enjoy their purchases, enjoy the product. If people are purchasing things, they're giving you money, you're giving them in-game items, you know, maybe allow them to actually maybe allow them to actually do a thing. I guess that's what I'm trying to say. Just the Ares Ion is just one of those things where it's just going to be either crapping on everything all the time or just being absolutely useless. This thing is going to be a balanced nightmare. And I'm on the side, I'm of the opinion that this thing should never have been made and should never have been sold to the backers. There's really not much you can do. Either this thing's going to be really powerful or just really useless. And as a result, it should never have been made. And then there's the problem of metagaming with ships and Star Citizen. This is something we've seen in the past where certain ships outperform other ships just in combat in general, or even in just other aspects. I mean, really hard for any ship to outperform in certain roles, because for mining, for example, there's only very few mining ships out there, but I'm sure CIG will give us more mining ships in the future. But for combat especially, and cargo hauling, some of the most mature gameplay loops out there at the moment, some ships will just be better than other ships at those roles for various reasons. And if the Ion ever gets to the point where it becomes good you'll see it a lot more. Players will seek out these ships that do exactly what they want them to do. And as far as PvP is concerned, most PvP generally devolves into ganking or player killing, just PKing. And most people who want to PK, people who just want to kill, they're not going to go after like a fair fight. They're not going to challenge you to an honorable duel. They're going to sneak up on you and try to blast you down as fast as possible and just watch you explode. That's what they're going to do. And then they're going to put a kill montage up on YouTube. That's what kind of makes the Ion a little bit problematic, is the expectation that it's going to be powerful. And it's on a fighter chassis. You have a size 7 weapon on a fighter level chassis, something that Star Citizen really wasn't designed to. It took us this long to get a fighter this size with this size of a gun on it. Never before have we had in Star Citizen up to this point any hint of this sort of craft as the Ion or the Inferno. There are some real-world crossovers to ships like the Ion. I think the Italians messed around with like a twin-engine plane with a gigantic cannon on it. The Italian P-108A had a 102mm anti-tank gun strapped to it. So there is some real-world counterparts, but that plane really didn't see any use other than test firing. The Inferno, which is the least problematic of the pair, because the Inferno at least is balanced by its ammunition capacity and its fire rate and its cone of fire. There's each shot doesn't do 1,000,000 points of damage. You actually have to sit within the firing arc of the Inferno for it to do a substantial amount of damage. There's a few ships that can actually avoid that, but the Ion's problematic because you can just hold the fire button down. Even with new capacitors, you just get the ship in your reticle, pew, 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 pew. If you don't have enough maneuverability to get out of the way, your shields can go down. Once your shields go down, you're very vulnerable. Even if the Ion itself doesn't become a hard kill, it can definitely become a soft kill, where your shields go down, then you can have something else to come in and deliver some damage. I guess that's teamwork, teamwork OP, nerf teamwork kind of thing. But there are some real-world crossovers between the Inferno and the A-10. How many goddamn times does CIG have to reinvent the A-10 before we finally have the definitive reimagining of the A-10 in Star Citizen? I mean, first it was the Gladius, because it had the Gallerson's Tactical Systems 210 on it, the Scorpion, all those years ago, which was a bespoke weapon mount. And of course we had the Avenger, which had a similar bespoke size 3 Gatling cannon on it. And then of course we had the Merlin. And everyone was like, oh, the Merlin's exactly like the A-10. And then of course we had the Vanguard, which came default with the Apocalypse Arms Revenant Gatling cannon. And now we have the Inferno. Of course it's another A-10. Like, everybody has a giant hard-on for this goddamn Gatling cannon. Like I said, the Inferno, I'm least concerned with the Inferno. The Inferno has many different things. You can balance it over. Even though it says on the webpage it's supposed to shred through fighters. You can adjust the flight characteristics of it to be good and bad against fighters. But really, you end up with another system where, at least with the Ion, where CIG's chasing this meta that they've already made redundant years ago in 3.5. You go back before the patch 3.5, you go back to patch 3.4 to 3.3 to 3.2, where we had this high alpha meta where laser cannons were much, much, much more damaging and shields were considerably weaker. And even then, ships were a lot more maneuverable. It only took about 2 to 3 shots, 2 to 3 trigger pulls to actually vaporize any ship you wanted to with most ships, like Hornet, Sabres. This was the golden era of the Sabre and the Hornet, mostly because the Sabre and the Hornet had enough alpha damage to vaporize anything their same size, even after they buffed the size of the weapons on the Gladius. 3 size 3 against 4 size 3. So it takes the Gladius 4 trigger pulls versus the Sabre's 2 trigger pulls to actually do something. It can be done, but just blind luck could sometimes carry you through a fight. Just getting that extra hit, boom, dead. You also saw the glaive being a problem too, because the glaive was really good at blowing up freelancers and cutlasses. And these were like the medium traders. These were like the workhorse vehicles. But the glaive was really good at bullying ships like the Freelancer and the Cutlass. And I see the Ion come out, and I know CIG wants the Ion to be an anti-capital ship fighter. This thing is just going to poop on just about everything smaller than a capital ship that isn't a dedicated fighter. Then we come back around to this idea of hiring escorts. If your goal is just to destroy, why fight the escorts when you can just vaporize, a Freelancer or a Cutlass in just a few trigger pulls? The old way of taking down capital ships in Star Citizen was torpedoes, and if you had a larger gun, it was understood going to be mounted to a much larger ship. You really can't countermeasure a fighter craft. You can't shoot down the projectile coming out of the Ion or the Inferno. You could shoot down the torpedoes, you can have your escorts shoot down the torpedoes, you can have your escorts chase off whatever had the torpedo attached to it. You also had countermeasures. There was a lot more counterplay available to the pilot who was being targeted by torpedo ships than there is now, because the Ion can just sit outside your engagement envelope and just hold the trigger down. Just keep shooting. Your only hope is either your turret gunners being able to respond to that person. Maybe you can maneuver in such a way that the Ion can't hit you. This is the problem I'm coming with. Like, players will metagame as hard as possible. If they have an objective and there's something out there that does the objective as efficiently as possible, meta, most effective tactic available. If the Ion does what a PKer wants, then they're going to seek out the Ion or the Inferno, whatever does the job the best. And so we're just kind of going right back to the previous meta that CIG already abandoned all those years ago with the 2-shot and 3-shots from the Hornets and the Sabres. It's quite obvious since 3.5. We've had several balance passes since then that have raised the time to kill substantially for ships, and CIG is threatening to raise time to kill even more when we start getting stuff like armor and physicalized damage, time to disable, that kind of stuff. Maybe I'm worrying for nothing. Maybe it'll all work out in the end, and maybe nobody will like the Ion ever again, because when physicalized damage come out, the Ion is just a pile of crap. I'll be fine with that, honestly. Like I said, I hate this ship. I like the look of it. It's a nice ship to look at, other than the lopsided gun. They could have copied the R-wing from Star Fox. All they had to do was move the cannon in line with the pilot and kind of sweep the wings back a little bit. It's been great. Oh well. Constellation and 600i kind of have the same problem, but not nearly as bad as the Ion. Pilot-controlled weaponry is considerable on both the 600i and the Constellation series, and I've always had a problem with the level of firepower that they have, but that's a completely different video for another time. If we're going to talk about the Ares Ion, we might as well talk about the Inferno, the silliness of the Inferno as well. Like I said, I don't have much of a problem with the Inferno, mostly because there's other balancing factors. Ammunition is a lot more scarce on that ship. You can run out and you have to return to base, unlike the Ion. Also, it makes a little bit more sense, because we do have real-life corollaries to the Inferno, like energy weapons. Like, how does an energy weapon work? Power plant and whatnot. So I find the Inferno less offensive to my sensibilities. But even then, the Inferno's got some serious design flaws in it, and this is something I could say about just a lot of ships in Star Citizen have some serious design flaws, mostly because they're designed by artists. They're not designed by people who have any sort of engineering background. And do you want to have ships that look cool, or do you want to have ships that look like bathtubs? That's kind of how you're going to design ships for a game. If you go with more realistic stuff, you're going to get more like The Expanse, where ships start to look very similar to each other. You have very little to differentiate between all the ships. They're going to be long cylinders with engines in the back and torpedo tubes all over them, turrets and whatnot. Very samey. So obviously CIG is designed to go the more artistic style, where they've allowed their artists to have more freedom. But if you start looking at the Inferno as something that's designed to actually work, that large Gatling cannon, why? Why not just have 4 guns? Why does it have to rotate? You could obviously design a feed system where you could feed from a single ammo hopper into 4 different barrels and have each barrel working independently of each other. You don't have to have the stupid thing rotate and fire. Real cool, obviously, but how many times do we have to reinvent the A-10 before we definitively have reinvented the A-10? Are we going to have another ship come out in Star Citizen several years from now that's going to be like the Inferno, but the gun's going to be underneath the pilot, and it's going to be the A-10 this time? It's also the recoil, that stupid thing. The fact that it's off-center from the center of thrust. This is kind of a concept. There's the center of mass and there's center of thrust for a starship. And if those two don't line up, even for airplanes too, you have to have the center of mass and center of thrust, or center of lift as well, depending on how the wings work. You have to have all that stuff lined up, or you have some serious problems with controllability. So you have this large gun that's off-centered, and how guns work is recoil propels the gun backwards while the bullet goes out the front of the gun. So therefore, you'd have torque applied to the ship while the gun's firing, but not only do you have torque from the recoil of the gun, but you also have torque from the rotation of the gun as well. So you'd have to have some sort of counterbalance somewhere in there to counter that torque that the gun applies on the ship. And a lot of this could be just prevented by having a non-moving barrel in line with the engines, like the center of the ship. Just literally the pilot sits on top of the gun. This problem I have with the Inferno would just go away, it just wouldn't be there, but got this really unique design where the gun's almost like a Star Wars B-Wing kind of design, I would call it. I call the Star Wars B-Wing the bullshit fighter because it's so flippin' stupid. It's just terrible. Why would you design a fighter like that? But here we are. If a fighter chassis can accept this ridiculous gun, what can't mount this gun? What can't mount a similar gun, right? So the energy weapon. If you have a cooling system and a power system, that can handle firing the size 7 gun on the Ion, what can't have that power or cooling system, right? If a lot of it comes down to a size constraint, and this is obviously something that's very video gamey that I feel very about. Like, it's very unsavory. I dislike this sort of design. CIG's broken my immersion because if the Ion can mount this stupid gun, what else can't mount this stupid gun? Like, why can't you put this on a Constellation? I mean, there's enough room inside the Constellation to mount serious cooling and power plants. Why can't you just take the top turret off the Constellation, slap or 2 size 7 guns to the top of the Constellation like some sort of crappy technical? Or same with a Taurus. Or how about a Caterpillar? Can't you just take the cargo bays out of the Caterpillar and put a bunch of these guns facing sideways out one side and just roll up next to an Idris and just lay waste with a huge broadside of these things? Can't you strap them to the turret on an Idris or something? And you have the mounting options. Why can't you just mount them to an Idris or something? Why can't you mount them to a Hercules? Why can't you mount them to a Caterpillar? Why can't you mount them to a Constellation? If you can mount them to a fighter, you could mount something similar to a larger ship. So that's kind of like my problem there. Obviously, there's some considerations with the ammo feed system for the Inferno, but then again, same thing with the Ion. Like, if you could mount the size 7 Gatling cannon to the Inferno, a fighter-sized chassis, why can't you mount it to something else? Maybe take the torpedo bay out of Retaliator. It had put 2 of these things inside of Retaliator. Why not? Seems like a stupid idea, but I really could. I hate these ships. I really do. And that's kind of like the core of my argument, is if you could put these on the fighter chassis, why can't you put them on something bigger? Thank you so much, everybody, for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. Let me know what you think in the comments. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for the algorithm gods. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. Live on Twitch most days, and if you want any stream updates or YouTube updates, you can check out the Twitter as well.